let's get this straight right from the get-go. Like all Christians, the foundation of Presbyterianism is the Bible and a lively relationship with Jesus Christ. We'd hope that goes without saying. But to understand precisely what defines the Presbyterian Church, we have to go all the way back to 16th century Scotland. See, 500 years ago, the Church of Scotland was pretty much dominated by Roman Catholicism, and congregations weren't too happy about it. Bishops held all the power, and yet, for the most part, they had little to no understanding of the Bible's message, nor the grace with which to preach the gospel. Worse, the church had priests thrust upon them who knew even less than the bishops. Whether they liked it or not, these priests called the shots, and the churches had to pay for their food and lodging. There were three main issues that disturbed the church. The 3 Ps. Preaching, that lacked the very heart of the Bible, the saving grace and new birth offered through Jesus Christ. As it stood, this message was usually either garbled or completely absent. Public worship, that centered on taking Mass rather than hearing and believing the word, to the point that the act of taking the sacrament dominated over actual faith in Jesus. Polity, where disenfranchised congregations had no say in who stood in the pulpit. It was the bishop's guy or no guy. So really these protests came down to doctrine, worship, and leadership. And here's how Christians responded. Firstly, the absolute legend John Knox wrote a confession of faith that expertly outlines the core principles of faith contained in the Bible, and it became a much-needed common guide for congregations and ministers. Secondly, the Roman Catholic Mass was set aside in favour of a public worship focused on prayer, singing, scripture reading, and preaching. And thirdly, procedures were devised to allow congregations to elect their own elders who, in turn, would be serviced by a pastor also chosen by them. That's how the Presbyterian Church was born. And we are still committed to the same principles today, to live by the biblical principles outlined in the Confession of Faith, to worship as has been derived from the Bible, and that each congregation has the right to elect their own elders and minister.